The most coveted big man on the NBA trade market right now, Jonas Valanciunas, and a really close runner-up, Robert Williams. Why are these two players, flawed but interesting players, in such high demand around the NBA? Let's dig into the latest news on the NBA trade market. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Only about 20% of you are actually subscribed right now. Other 80%, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button. Donnie Freeman joining me. Donnie, the trade market really heating up now, especially now that general managers are at the G League showcase. So what are we thinking here? Valanciunas being the top name, according to Jake Fisher, on the center trade market. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I think this is just an offshoot of the fact that there's been a big man renaissance, if you will, over the last couple of years. And I think that a lot of teams are valuing getting some of these centers. And I think that centers are going to be a commodity for this year's deadline, and then maybe even the next couple of years as well. And Valanciunas is one of the guys that you could go ahead and pick up. And I think that he's got some favorable things in his contract that teams may be finding enticing as well. But if you're a Lakers fan, like a lot of the audience, you don't want to hear that there are other suitors.
I mean, there are a number of, the Denver Nuggets have already been mentioned as a suitor for Valanciunas.
Yeah,
There's a number of teams that are looking for bigs. The Knicks, is they're waiting for Mitchell Robinson to return. The Pelicans are mentioned as a team that still, despite the fact that Yves Missi has been playing well, according to Jake Fisher, the Pels are still very much on the market for a big man. Although personally, we've talked about it here. We think the Pelicans should maybe, or at least I do, think the Pelicans should maybe look at tearing it down and kind of restarting things next season. But Valanciunas, the contract is great, $30 million deal, 3-year deal, but the third year is non-guaranteed. So it's really just a 2-year deal if you want it to be. So that kind of flexibility, I think, is important. Movable contract for a starting caliber center. And that, I think, is it. Because when we look at some of the other bigs that are on the market, you talk about, well, Walker Kessler, is he even available? Are the Jazz willing to move on from him? Maybe, maybe not. Are the Hornets willing to move on from Nick Richards? Maybe, maybe not. Those are very tradable salaries. Walker Kessler's at like $4 million, $5 million for Nick Richards. But after that, you've got this kind of big jump to get to like the Jakob Poeltls and Nikola Vucevic's, Clint Capella's of the world, who are sitting around that $20 million range. Instead, in this really nice mid-tier range, right around the mid-level exception, you've got Jonas Valanciunas. I think I would take those $20 million centers if we threw out the contracts ahead of Valanciunas, but it's so much easier to trade for his salary. I think that's gone a long way towards increasing his market value. What do you think about him as a center, though? Is he a guy that teams should be willing to really go after?
He's tricky. I'm not sure if I'm not
exactly
sure.
A ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I'm not so well because we watched him get played out of 2 crucial back-to-back games at the end of the last season against the Lakers. Yeah. He got literally targeted and played off the floor. That's not a ringing sign of endorsement. I do think that there is value there, getting another big guy in any, and not just the Lakers, but like any team's rotation. Obviously, like I said, is nice with the way that the league is right now, trending more upward in size. And I think he could be useful there. I do think he has his limitations, though. He's slow-footed, probably locked to a drop, not the best rim protector. But when you talk about his contract with some of the offensive and rebounding production he can give you, I think that's valuable. But I think for a lot of teams, you're maybe looking for him for 20 or so minutes per game. And then you could argue, is that really what you need? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And what are you willing to give up in order to get that? But on that contract, that's a little bit below the mid-level. A lot of teams this year can now use their mid-level exceptions as trade, except first time we've seen that. Mid-level exceptions can now be used under the new CBA as trade exceptions. So he would fit right into one of those. So that would make it very easy for a lot of teams to absorb his salary. And I think that's an attractive quality for him. But I thought it was interesting. Jake Fisher also mentioned that if it's not Valanciunas, it's Robert Williams as the most coveted center on the trade market. Robert Williams, he's an incredibly talented player when he's on the court. But that's the problem. There's the rub, right? He's rarely on the floor. He's dealt with injuries for much of his NBA career. When he's out there, he's certainly effective and efficient. He's played in 8 games so far this season, Donnie. 8 games for Robert Williams so far, dealt with a few injuries, was in concussion protocol for a while, 9.4 points, almost 6 rebounds, 1.6 blocks. He's averaging less than 20 minutes for Portland right now, but has a nice contract. As Jake Fisher talked about, has a nice contract. And so that I think we're hitting under this new CBA, Donnie, where the contract off the court, the importance of that, I think is increased compared to what we've ever seen before. If Robert Williams and Jonas Valanciunas are the top 2 names on the center market, the most coveted players on the center market, when there's guys like Nikola Vucevic, who's having a career year, Jakob Poeltl, who's a really intriguing young big, you've got Clint Capella, who's been an anchor for the Hawks for years. You've got names like that. For Valanciunas and Robert Williams to be preferable to those players, I think it tells you how important contract size is in today's market.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things. And then another thing with Rob, isn't he also just under contract for 1 more year after this? I don't think he's got a contract the following year. So that's another element for him. So yeah, definitely. I think that with the way that the rosters are built, it's really hard to say you're going to have a starting center that's not like a, all-star level center that's making more than about 20 or 25 million. And it's really hard. So these guys become very valuable with what they're at, and they're at about basically mid-level, basically, for them both. So if you can get good quality production from a center, and like I've said already, I think the league is trending upward in size, then there's a lot of upside there. And I think with Rob specifically, he's got some deficiencies out there on the court, but his upside defensively is so high. It's just the health with him is the problem. And also, I think because of the health issues, he's also going to be somebody that'll never be able to take on a role that's going to be more than about 20 minutes per game. You could argue whether or not you'd want that or even need that from your team, but it's going to keep him locked in that area at about 20 minutes, 17, 18 minutes per game. And maybe that's what you have to do for him to be out there and healthy. But when he's out there, I think he's averaging already like 2 blocks per game on the season, only played about 8 games so far, but he's just a monster. So I think the upside is massive. Yeah, he must have not had any blocks in the last game because it was 1.9 when he played 7 games. So he must not.
Yeah. So he's so 1.6 right now per game. But bottom line, he's a really solid rim protector. He's got some mobility. He's got the ability to hit the little 15-foot jump shot as well. So he's a good player. But look, I mean, he played 6 games last season, 35 games the season before that. He's just not been on the floor enough. But again, that contract, very easy to absorb in the mid-level, and teams are looking for this kind of stuff right now. So I think it's interesting, too, that
he's
Fisher's
also a 50%
saying,
three-point shooter.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, tiny, but yeah, but how many attempts does he even have? He's made 0.1 out of 0.3. Like, there's no way. That's not even that math doesn't even work on that.
That doesn't work for like 8 games, does it?
No.
I'm sorry. I had to get that out there. He's a 50% three-point shooter, guys. He is lighting it up.
Yes, technically that's the stat that shows up here.
He is.
But that's like
where he said he's going to take one and then just never take another one again when he made one.
That's right. That's right. Then he can be the NBA's first 100% three-point shooter. Just take and make one and never shoot ever again. This is, I think what's interesting is when you look at Jake's piece where he's talking all about this kind of stuff, he talks a little bit about the fact that now teams are looking for, in terms of finding bigs on the market, they're looking for not just a specific big man, not just a guy who's going to be their every game player, but they're looking for guys that can be a specialty player at the big position. So you want to have a guy who can shoot the 3 for you. You want to have a guy that can be a rebounding specialist, physical specialist. You want to have a particularly switchy defensive player. And of course, you'd ideally like to have all of those qualities wrapped up in multiple qualities of one player, but essentially saying that you need not just 2 bigs, you need multiple bigs on your roster, and you need them to specialize and have different skill sets so that you can deploy them appropriately. And I think that there's some real truth to that. When we look at the NBA right now, coaches have to have the ability to mix and match to respond to what their opponents have on the floor. And so having that kind of versatility is really important. And I think it's led to bigs where even if it's Robert Williams and you say, well, he's never going to start for us, we're never going to play more than 20 minutes per game. If he is that guy that you can plug in as a specialty type big, and Valanciunas probably fits in the same category, that's becoming more and more important to have in today's NBA, as we're seeing. I think we said off the top, sort of a resurgence of the center position.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I'm not so sure how many of the guys that can do multiple things are going to be on the market, but when you can get some of these guys that can do one thing and you put them together and you have that optionality, I think you can go pretty far, with whatever roster you're trying to go. But do you think, let's end on this. Do you think both of these guys wind up getting traded or just Val? I think we're both pretty sure Val's getting traded, but I'm not sure about Rob, just because they have concerns.
I think, and here's my biggest concern with the Robert Williams thing. It is the Jake is reporting that if the Blazers make a move, it's not expected to come until closer to the February 6th trade deadline. So I'm sure they're going to try to squeeze teams on their asking price there. And there's so many other bigs out there on the market. There's so many alternatives that makes me think maybe Portland does just hang on to him. I don't think they should. I think they need to move on from Jeremy Grant. I think they need to move on from Anthony Simons. I think they need to move on from Robert Williams if they can before he gets hurt again, because it's only a matter of time. But I think Valanciunas does get moved. I don't know about Robert Williams. They should move him. And I think that right now Portland is probably posturing a bit. But I'm going to say just Valanciunas winds up getting moved and that Portland doesn't wind up getting their asking price on Robert Williams, and so he winds up staying. That's my best guess. I hope that's not the case. I hope both wind up getting moved and we get some great trades and some exciting stuff going on, and I think it's in the best interest of the Blazers as well. Let me ask you this. If the price is the same, the cost to acquire is the same, which would you rather have, Robert Williams or Jonas Valanciunas?
Oh, man. Rob. I just think the upside's there with Rob. I'm taking it. I think Val has a lot of value as a interior scorer.
Value in Tunis?
Yeah, value.
Value in Tunis? I can't even say it. That didn't land.
No. As leave the jokes to me, Trev. No. In all seriousness, yeah, as an interior scorer, it can pop for you a little bit in mid range. Every now and again, he'll shoot a three. But the rebounding is awesome. I think that there's value there, and you want maybe a bigger guy for some of the matchups, even if he specifically isn't going to be the one holding the fort down. Maybe you have other players around him that can help with that defensive side. But I think the value for Rob is very high. It's just he's almost a theoretical player. He's never really out there. So if you want more of a sure thing, especially right now, than Valanciunas, but for me, I'd rather take the upside. Just me personally.
I wish he had played like a little more. I mean,
yeah, he's coming back. He just played his first game in a long time.
Yeah, he was in concussion protocol, and now he's back. But I mean, that's talking about over the last few years. He played 6 games last year. Like, the injury history is so extensive. I think you're right. I think I gamble on the upside, but I have a I know with much more certainty that if I go after Valanciunas, that I'm actually going to be able to play him, where I don't know what's going to happen with Robert Williams. It's very much a gamble. Nick Richards? Yeah, but we'll see if he winds up on the market. But everybody, let us know your thoughts. Who would you take if the price is the same for Valanciunas, Robert Williams? Who would you take? Let us know in the comment section, and go check out our latest video on the Walker Kessler trade front and what's going on there with the Utah Jazz.